Hi, welcome to the #Wild podcast. We're back on serial killers this week, so that means content warnings for violence, murder, rape, and cannibalism. There are no intro topics this week, so we are diving right into all of that. My name is Matt. My co-host is Susanna. This is #Wild. Let's go. So our next one you wanted to do. He
always
doesn't
throwing me
even
under the bus. Always exposing me.
He doesn't. Oh, well, we're going to get to that. But no, he doesn't even technically meet the criteria for serial killers because he only has 2 confirmed kills. But Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield. And you'll see why he probably does actually meet the criteria for serial killers.
Wait, what do you mean he only has 2 legitimate
He only
ones?
has 2 confirmed victims.
So his whole body, his whole house filled with body parts is not him?
They're from, well, hold on, we'll get to it. But
never mind. I get it, never mind.
Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden are his only 2 confirmed kills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Ed was born in 1906, so a long time ago, but he was active much later, a lot unlike other serial killers who immediately become active, like the ones we've discussed, like in their early 20s. He didn't become active until at least 38. And that number is disputed. In his early childhood, his father worked, he also grew up on a farm, or like a ranch.
Yeah, I get it.
And his father wasn't abusive, but was neglectful.
Got it.
And his mother was very religious, like a religious zealot, very like indoctrinating, and she spoke always about the outside world as evil, and specifically as women as
oh god, yes,
as like whores and horrible people and evil.
He was Bates Motel was based off of him.
Yes, exactly.
And
a
American
lot was
Psycho.
based on Ed Gein. American Psycho, both Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs are based on Ed Gein.
Yeah,
and
I just feel like I wanted to pick him not only because of like how freaking insane his story is,
crazy.
but he influenced so much of, I guess, like pop culture in a way.
Yeah, serial killer pop culture,
like
totally.
So many stories were based off of him. I heard that even part of House of a Thousand Corpses.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Was also based off of him a little bit,
But it
just
wouldn't
because
surprise
of
me, yeah.
body parts and stuff.
So in his early adulthood, he lived at home. He still lived at home with his parents, all the way up until he was about he was in his 30s when his father died. Let me jump back for a bit because significantly, the first time he ever became sexually aroused was while watching his father kill pigs. So there was something wrong from the start.
That's weird as
Anyway, once he became aware of his sexuality, he once tried to masturbate in the bathtub, but his mother caught him. And
she got pissed.
Oh my God, yeah. She literally came into the bathroom and grabbed him by the genitals and squeezed them and was like, this is the sin. This is sin. And told him to never do it again. She also made him promise to stay a virgin for the rest of his life, which is significant. Anyway, so his criminal activity likely began when he was 38. This is after his father had died and his brother had, I believe, moved out, or at least was planning to move out. So he and his brother used to work a bunch of odd jobs around town. And one of the jobs they did was, this might have even been on their own farm, but they would do controlled burns of like brush or like whatever needs to be cleared out. Anyway, so one day when Gein was around 38, his brother was 43. One of the fires got out of control and the fire department had to come help put it out. So then after the fire, Ed reported that Henry was missing. And so they formed a search party to go look for him. And Ed was able to lead the search party almost directly to the body. The body wasn't burned. It was bruised in a couple places, but they ruled, and they ruled that he had died of asphyxiation from the smoke, and they never did an autopsy. When they questioned Ed about why he was able to lead them directly to the body, all he said was, "Funny how that works."
Mm-hmm.
That kill was never confirmed. It's not attributed to him, but if he did kill his brother, it would push him over the classification for serial killer, which is 3 kills on separate occasions. So shortly thereafter, his mother became very ill, and she eventually died by the time he was 41. And after she died, he was very, very lonely and sad because she was the closest person in the world to him.
Well, yeah, because she was like obsessed.
Yeah.
Well, not obsessed with him, but obsessing over him.
In a way, he had kind of a severe case of Stockholm syndrome with her because she was
Right.
very abusive.
Right. Well, I feel like, yes, physically, but more mentally.
Yeah. Oh, no, completely.
She was like, she brainwashed him.
Yes, exactly.
Like, I don't know if anybody's seen Bates Motel, but it's the exact same.
The characters are based on Ed and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minus, like, I don't think Norma
Loosely.
ever beat him.
Sure.
Did she beat him?
I don't know. I know...
Because when I watched it, I don't remember her beating him.
Yeah,
but
I don't think so.
she would,
but,
like, scold him for
Yeah.
even, like, looking at a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's, like, that... And that created, like, the rage in him where it was, like, if I find this woman attractive, like, I'm doing something wrong. I'm
Right.
disobeying my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore, I'm, like, I'm guilty and I'm going to lose my shit.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So the first thing he did, the first thing he did after killing his brother was dig up his mother's corpse.
Yep.
He severed her head and he shrunk it and kept it. And then he began a string of grave robbings. So he would find women who resembled his mother and wait till they were buried and then exhume the grave because he wanted fresh bodies.
Right.
Pretty shortly thereafter. And so then he would take the bodies, decapitate them, keep the parts he liked.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, according to him, he never ate any of them. But apparently, according to him, he also never any of them. I think it goes back to his mother promising or forcing him to promise to be a virgin the rest of his life. And him not wanting
So
to
do you
disappoint
think,
her
like,
in perpetuity.
If he really didn't sleep with the bodies, do you think that was, like, he was so angry at his mom for not letting him experience that's why he kept digging up women that looked...
To be clear, I
like
think
her?
he was having sex with the bodies.
Oh, no, I totally think he was. But I'm just thinking, like, from his perspective, if he was not doing it,
Right.
I would just wonder if it was because, like, he was doing all this gross stuff and because he wasn't just digging them up and, like, dismembering the bodies. He was, like, using the bodies
Yeah, exactly.
as,
he
like,
would take
furniture and,
yeah,
like,
he would make...
kind of the Martha Stewart of serial killers.
Oh my God. Wow, what a way to put it.
I mean, like, love Martha, but he was. Who else? I mean, like, those skull bowls, those cereal bowls from a person's skull. Artiste.
Yeah. I mean, more significantly, he made like a vest out of human skin that he would wear.
Did he wanted to be his mother?
He wanted to become his mother, and
Yeah.
so he would kill, or not yet, but he would exhume bodies that resembled her, so that he could take their skin and essentially become his mother. Yeah, including their vulvas.
Millie, go to bed. You could go back to the vulva.
So most
Part.
notably, and this is once they found all of his items, but he had about 9 preserved vulva that he had amputated. And there's some debate about what he was doing with them, but some people think that he would kind of put them over his own genitalia as like I want to be a woman now.
Yeah,
type of
100%. I'm
thing,
like,
not
I'm
even
gonna
like a sexual type of thing.
look up some of his stuff.
Anyway, so eventually it progressed, and he started fixating on this woman, Mary Hogan, who was a bartender. And one night he shot her, dragged her back to his house, and decapitated her body. This was in 1954. And after she went missing, he would openly joke about her death and about her being missing. And he never had really like much of a sense of humor.
I was going to say, it seems like he was really like disconnected from reality.
Oh my God, yes. Completely. I think in a weird way, he probably thought his mother was telling the truth about the world being evil. And so he just never was ever going to be able to connect like to the world in a real way.
That's probably why he didn't feel bad killing people, because he was like, well, everyone's evil, so like they deserve it.
So he claims that during his grave robbing stints and during the 2 murders that he was dissociating, meaning like he doesn't remember them.
He would have blackouts.
Right,
allegedly.
Exactly. So, I mean, there could be some dissociative identity disorder there where maybe multiple versions of him are there.
He was like part schizophrenic.
Yeah, no, definitely. Diagnosed with schizophrenia in 1957. But so he had gotten away with that one. And then in 1957, he started stalking Bernice Worden, who was a hardware store worker. And the mistake he made there was he made a purchase from her that like
led to him.
Yeah, so minutes before.
Who did he keep in his garage that was like upside down and like body split?
That was Bernice.
That was her. Okay.
So he abducted her, he killed her in the hardware store with a gun. His MO is to shoot them first so they can't like struggle or anything. He wasn't like...
It's so messy.
Yeah. And so then he would drag them out, take them home, and decapitate them at home.
Dismember, yeah.
And so that's what he had done to her. But her son was actually a cop. And so it didn't take him long to catch the trail. It was only a couple of days. But it was long enough for him to kill and disfigure Bernice. Anyway, they arrested him shortly thereafter and searched his place, found all of his disgusting collection.
Oh, wait. Can I go down the list?
Please.
Okay. Do you have a list too?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have a list in my head.
I just Googled it. This is a different list than I named last time, but it works. So 4 noses, whole human bones and fragments, 9 masks of human skin, which is where a lot of horror movies like replicated that. Bowels made, wait, not bowels. Bowls. I got out of myself. I got too excited. Okay, I'm sweating. Anyway, balls made from, I can't read it because I'm laughing. This is the Martha Stewart part.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. Fuck. Okay, we're good. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Stop laughing. I can't look at you. Oh, God.
No making light of serial killers on the #Wild podcast. Not here.
Bowls made from human skulls. 10 female heads with tops sawed off. What the did he do with the tops of them?
Maybe it was so he could get to the brain.
The bowls. Human skin covering several chair seats. Mary Hogan's head in a paper bag. So sloppy. A paper bag.
Well, I mean, he had that one for 3 years. Mary
That's
Hogan,
nasty.
He killed in 1954.
Bernice Worden's head in a burlap sack. 9, this is the thing you were talking about. 9 vulvas in a shoebox. Skulls on his bedposts. Organs in the refrigerator. He definitely ate some bodies. There's no way he didn't.
100%.
A pair of lips on a drawstring for a window shade. I can't even envision what that would look like. Moving on. This was the one that I think caught me the most. A belt made from human female nipples.
I don't even get that one. That doesn't even make Like
What?
the vest and the vulvas and like whatever is part of his transformation. But what the fuck?
He was just a real hater. A lampshade made from the skin of a human face. So he was creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had a
That's
lot of
one
time
way
on
of
his
putting it.
hands.
Anyway, after his arrest, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and deemed not fit for trial. So they sent him to a mental hospital for about 11 years until 1968, when they decided he could stand trial. They only ever tried him for the murder of Bernice Worden. And they found him not guilty by reason of insanity and sent him back to the mental hospital.
Oh, that's such bullshit. Like, I get it. Like, if someone has some sort of mental illness and they kill somebody, like, you can plead insanity, and I get that. But at the same time, like, if you kill, you kill. Like, I don't think there's any excuse.
Yeah. I guess the main difference, and I did look into this pretty significantly, like, for example, you can't have, like, an insanity plea based on, like, a personality disorder diagnosis. Right. So if you have, like, narcissistic personality disorder or, like, even antisocial personality disorder. Yeah, because
people could even plead, people plead guilty all the time when they're not, not plead guilty, plead insanity when they're not. Right. So
the legal insanity plea specifically has to do with, like, whether the person is capable of understanding right from wrong at the time of, like, the killing.
Like a neuro test?
Yeah. So his claims that he was in, like, a dissociative fugue kind of.
I mean, I get that because, like, allegedly what would happen, I mean, this was happening in Bates Motel. I don't know if this is real life. But when he would black out, he would essentially, I guess, turn into his mother.
Yeah.
And then that's where, like, the rampage killing would start.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's Ed Gein.
He's a charmer.
One of the grossest serial killers in history. Okay. This next one really makes my skin crawl, but yeah, but one of the most notorious serial killers in history. Super disclaimer on this one. Like, if you want to skip any of them,
please do so one. Now.
Albert Fish. And if that name doesn't mean anything to you, you might just be better off. I can't emphasize again enough. If you're squeamish at all, skip this section. Albert Fish went by several monikers. The Werewolf of, and they're all really cool too. It's not fair because he's such
his last name
monster,
is Fish,
and he gets all these cool. Anyway, so he's known as the Werewolf of Wisteria. He's known as the Brooklyn Vampire, and he's known as a couple others, but people would also just call him the Boogeyman, like the Boogeyman.
Mm-hmm. Way more credit than he needs.
So much more. He was born in 1870, so like a different world, really. And his family was pretty poor. His father died when he was really young, and so his mother actually, to have the opportunity to work, ended up giving him and his siblings up to various orphanages. Working for a number of years, and then she went back for her kids later on, but like it was just the best she could do, really. Right. Not really her fault, given the death of his father. Even though he wasn't abused by his parents as a child, he did inherit a significant amount of, there was a really significant amount of mental illness in his family. On his father's side, and also in his direct family with, like, his siblings.
Right.
And obviously him, too. So he ended up at an all-boys orphanage run at the time by the Catholic Church, and they were very strict with him. And it was during this time that they would beat him as a punishment. You know, just the times back then. But he started to realize as he got older, close to adolescence, that he enjoyed the beatings. And then he started to notice that he would become sexually aroused from watching his classmates get beaten. And so by the time his mother got him back, by the age of 12, it was likely already too late. The damage had already been done. So between all of that, I'm not sure Albert Fish, similar to Ed Gein or a lot of these people, really ever had a chance at like a normal life. But anyway, after he left the orphanage, he started a number of homosexual relationships, became a prostitute, and eventually, and like his sexual depravity just increased until around 1910, when he's linked to his first definitive crime. He kidnapped a boy named Thomas Kedden. Oh my God, this is so f***ed up. Okay.
I know exactly which one this is too, so I'm just like,
okay, so he took Thomas Kedden out to like an abandoned farmhouse, where no one would be able to hear anyone screaming or being tortured, and he cut his penis in half, and then untied him and left him there. And supposedly he left the kid $10 for compensation or whatever it was.
my God.
So that was the first one we can definitely like link him to, the first real like crime, because I mean he had rapes before that, but nothing so gruesome until
Did the kid die from that one? I don't remember.
It's unknown.
I mean, I'm sure that either he went into shock or bled out.
Or bled out. It's totally possible he died. The only real like record of it is from Fish, and he never like went back to check. And so Fish continued raping, probably killing, although that's less discernible. He had a history of targeting underprivileged neighborhoods. His theory being, and correctly so, that at the time, if he killed black children or kids who lived in impoverished neighborhoods, he'd have a much easier time getting away with it than obviously more affluent neighborhoods and children. And so that was where he operated, in ghettos and with underprivileged kids, and he would lead them away in broad daylight.
And just to give like a quick backstory on what this dude looks like, he just looks like an old man.
Yeah, he's
not intimidating. I mean, he's intimidating now because I know who he is.
He was active from a pretty young age, but he was never like an overpowering type of killer.
Yeah,
he was slight,
skinny,
I think not muscular.
The first time I ever read about him, I was in 11th, so like I was like 17 at the time, the first time I ever heard about him, and I saw his photo and I'm like, this dude was out killing people. And I always thought, like, how crazy, like, that he can even overpower some of these people.
Yeah. Well, he mostly went for kids. That's partially why he mostly went for kids. Later on, he did get a little more bold, and this is eventually how he got caught. Anyway, his rapes number in the hundreds. His kills are estimated at around 15. And he admitted to cannibalizing 3 children.
Only 3?
Only 3. Fully. Because he didn't start it until later. He was raping and killing all the way through the 1910s and 20s.
Oh, okay.
He didn't start cannibalizing kids until he talked about this in a letter he wrote, until he met someone who had come back from China. China was in a time of famine, and so apparently, and I don't even know if this is factual, it's just what he wrote in his letters.
Okay.
Apparently the Chinese would kill off their excess kids and eat them back then. I didn't verify that at all, so it could be
It
hearsay.
could just be him being like making that up.
Yeah, totally. And he may have not even met a person who had like come back, but supposedly he met a person who had come back from China and told him that eating children's asses was the most delicious meat he'd ever had, and that that Albert just had to try it.
Do you think maybe it was part of like maybe a little schizo in him? Like he thought he met somebody? That he didn't?
Totally possible. I wouldn't rule out any sort of psychological disorder with him. There was just rampant mental illness in his family, and he was later diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses. But psychology and psychiatry weren't back then what they are now, obviously. Really. So I think now it would be a lot easier to diagnose him. Also based on the fact that most of what we know about him is from self-report. It's just kind of hard to say for sure.
He might have glorified himself a little bit.
Exactly.
Because all of the letters he wrote, the way that he would write them, I don't know what's going on down there. The way that he would write them, it was almost like he was telling a story.
Yeah.
It was very just like,
really
he like fantasized what he did.
Totally, yeah. And so to clarify, there's a bunch of letters he wrote, and they're all horrific, but some went out to like potential partners who he felt like maybe would want to kill kids with him. Others went out to
what a love letter.
Literally the families of the kids he had killed.
Didn't he sound like some sort of body part at one point? Not body part, but like an ear or something?
Possibly. I'm unaware of it if he did, but
I thought it was like...
Again, like nothing about Albert Fish would surprise me at this point.
It could be a totally different person that I'm thinking of. But
anyway, so he did start cannibalizing children later on in his career. Around 1928, when he was propositioned. Well, he propositioned a young boy to become his farmhand. Mind you, Albert didn't have a farm. Mm-hmm. But he was going to kill and cannibalize this young boy. But the boy, when he went to meet him, turned out to be a little bigger and stronger than he was hoping for. The kid was around 14, 15. And mm-hmm. Albert was aging at this point in his 50s or 60s. And so... that like 58 he would have been 58, yeah. So he was unsure if he'd be able to overpower him, but he kind of just went along with the plan anyway. He went to meet this kid's family to like be like, hey, I'm gonna offer your son a job. He's gonna come back to New York,
and it looks like a sweet little man, so
yeah, right?
They were like, yeah, totally, go for it.
And they invited him in, and that is when he met Grace Budd, who was the little sister of the kid he had initially planned to take. And so it was that day, Albert and Grace and the family sat there chatting. And then Albert suggested that they let him take Grace with him to a party, and that he would bring her back afterwards. And they were sort of just like caught in a place where they didn't want to say no to him. He was about to give their son a job, pay him $15 a week, which back in 1928 was a lot of money. Yeah. And that was basically going to provide for them because the parents were starting to get to an age where they couldn't really work anymore. And $15 a week was like going to cover everything, basically.
Right.
And so they're in this very awkward position where they're like, this guy we just met wants to take our daughter away for the evening, like our child daughter away for the evening. And if we say no, we might ruin this great financial opportunity. And so they said yes.
Wow.
And Grace Budd was never seen alive again.
Yep.
This part's hard to tell, but he took Grace back to his place, and he had her continue playing outside while he went upstairs, took off all his clothes, and then called her upstairs, and then he hid in the closet until she came in the room. He came out of the closet completely naked and grabbed her, started stripping off her clothes, and then choked her to death. He says he didn't rape her.
What?
Well, and it might even be credible because almost all of his rapes were of boys.
Oh, that's right. He even had, I don't know if you're going to mention it, but he had like one kid that he actually even would keep drugged all the time and would keep him as like his sexual like zombie.
Yeah.
And then
I couldn't find the name of that kid.
I don't know his name either. But he like, the cops saw him like running around naked and he was just like, oh, he's just crazy. Like, he's just a drug addict. And the cops were like, okay.
Yeah.
He like didn't even get caught.
Anyway, so once he had killed Grace, he cut all the body parts off of her that he wanted to keep for eating.
Back at it again.
And he said it took him about 9 days to eat all of it.
Ew.
To eat all of her, I guess.
Also, meat for 9 days, like, you think it would spoil.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did have refrigeration back then. I'm sure it was.
Maybe a freezer.
Yeah. So, yeah, he dismembered her, ate her, and then 6 years later, he sent a letter to her family detailing the whole thing. It's really horrific. You can go and find it. I'm not going to read it to you because it's really up, and I just don't want. I don't want to put you or myself or anyone else through reading that if you don't want to. But it's out there if you want to find it. Anyway, this is the letter that eventually led to him being caught. The family was able to tell enough about him, his appearance, etc.,
Right.
that the police were able to start to hone in on him. They eventually found a place where he had been residing, where he had actually sent the letters from, and the landlord of the place told them that his son had left money for him. And so he eventually came back to get the money, and that's when the police caught him. I should mention Albert had 6 kids of his own, and
Lord.
all of them said that he never abused them or touched them.
Okay.
And so, for whatever that's worth,
Yeah, right.
I guess you're literally safer being the child in this case of a serial killer than like living next door to one. But
honestly.
not in every case, of course.
I mean, sometimes the parents, I mean, not the parents, but sometimes like people that they know are like, we never saw this coming.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case with him.
True. Okay.
And he did display a lot of like the classic signs of like in childhood of what the type of child that develops into a serial killer. The 3 main signs are extended bedwetting, cruelty to animals, and arson, like attempted or fascination with arson.
You mean like pyro?
Yeah. Like setting fires, yeah. So,
I mean,
yeah.
like, those are 3 very different things.
But it's the combination of the 3 that
Bedwetting?
denotes the potential for a serial killer. Yes.
Why bedwetting?
I don't know. Lack of control, I think, over
Their body?
yeah, their own being per se. And then the arson and the cruelty to animals make complete sense.
Because I mean, I totally get
was
being
surprised
like
about finding
obsessed
out
with.
bedwetting, too.
I mean, the animal thing. Yes.
And it's not like just
I get
bedwetting
that.
by itself. Is like your child wets the bed at 8 years old. He's not like going to be a serial killer.
100%. Yeah. I just had never heard that before. I knew the animal thing for sure.
Yeah.
But
And you don't have to obviously display all 3, but like the likelihood of a child who displays all 3 to become a serial killer is like significantly pretty high.
okay. Because like pyro, it's like I feel like a lot of people that at least I know like playing with some sort of fire.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
that doesn't mean we're starting fires.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly like what the criteria are, and this is just something I ran into obliquely in my research because I wasn't researching that specifically. It just kept coming up in a lot of these cases that you would see like bedwetting, or you would see cruelty to animals, or you would see arson, or a combination of 2 or 3. And I think Fish Only was a bedwetter and the cruelty to animals bit. But yeah, so that's Albert Fish, one of the most disgusting serial killers in history. So I did forget to mention earlier that we're recording this on Columbus Day, and Columbus is a serial killer too, so him.
Wait. Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Okay,
Christopher Columbus, huge serial killer, him. Columbus Day.
I didn't know today was Columbus Day. That's how much I don't care.
Columbus Day.
That's how much I don't care.
And so, yeah, that's another serial killer.
We just took a quick break because currently, right now, there's a bunch of helicopters circling the house.
Yeah.
And
police have us surrounded.
Yeah, like the entire street is blocked off with
They heard
cops.
about our podcast. No, I'm sure they're
As we're talking about serial
after
killers.
a serial killer that lives in the neighborhood.
Allegedly.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, we only have one more to do here, and it's Samuel Little, who was recently named the most prolific serial killer of all time in U.S. history. He has confessed to 93 murders spanning from 1970 to 2005, and police have verified up to 50 of them with links to up to 61 of them, and they do believe that all 93 are credible. So they're digging through cold cases now to see if they can match more of the victims. And I think he's done confessing. I think those are the ones, the 93. But now they're just in a race against the clock before he dies to verify them all.
Got it.
And they have verified a significant amount of them, and I've watched some of them because they made some of them public because they want like other jurisdictions and other people to maybe help identify some of these victims. So they made 5 specifically public, and I watched them, and he's just like, he's so candid and lucid and cavalier about it. It's really sickening to watch him talk about them.
Got it.
Even though he wasn't like the worst on our list, still really, really bad. So he was born in 1940, and we don't know as much about his childhood as we do about all the other ones we profiled. His mother was apparently really young and was a sex worker when she had him. And so he was sent to live with his grandmother really early on, and she raised him for a really long time. He was a pretty poor student, but a decent athlete. And so he ended up dropping out of high school. And that's when his rap sheet started. Just like 16 years old, he started getting arrested. As early as that, just for petty stuff early on, but eventually it escalated. So eventually, after he was done with school and had dropped out, he went to Florida to find his biological mother because they had been estranged, and he spent some time in Florida, and that is where he made his first kill. And from there, he was all up and down the eastern seaboard and the eastern half of the United States, really. Eventually, he was apprehended on a number of charges, but every time he either got released or just served a really little amount of time. Specifically, one of the times he pled guilty to a rape and was only sentenced to 3 months in prison.
So what were his like kills primarily? Was he sloppy about it? Was it shooting? Was it
in a way he was sloppy, just because he didn't really go out of his way to hide the bodies.
Got it.
He would sort of like just dump them.
But what would he do? Was
in
it
low
like
traffic
gruesome?
areas like the woods or like the side of a highway or like whatever, where they weren't likely to be found for a while at least.
Got it.
But his MO was to pick up prostitutes usually, or just women who were on the outskirts of society who people wouldn't miss. And he would, and this is gross, and if you're on our live stream and you're not prepared for this, I'm super sorry, but a
lot of disclaimers.
Yeah, for real. He would choke them to death while masturbating. So use one hand to choke them and use the other hand to masturbate.
Nice.
And
so they would die by asphyxiation.
Yes. but he is what's called a power controlling type killer. So he would draw it out for as long as possible. He would often knock them out, like strangle them until they lost consciousness, and then like let revive them regain consciousness, and then strangle them. Oh my God. Yeah, so really, really horrible MO here too. And he did this for 35 years on and off. That's the only times he was really off was actually when he was in prison. So he did serve a number of years in prison, but never more than 2 consecutive. Okay. But yeah, he just kept getting let go or his cases dismissed because people wouldn't testify against him. And eventually he made it out to California, where he, in the 1980s, along with a number of other serial killers, just went to town on the inner city of LA. Got it. And that's likely where he amassed a large number of his victims. He claims he was most active in Florida at the beginning, in the early 1970s, and then in California at the end, the 1980s and 90s. Got it. He had stopped killing by 2005, but he still hadn't been caught for the murders. And so the case was starting to go cold, and he, at some point, left California after 2005. And the detective who eventually caught him, she's wonderful. Mitzi, I love her. Dude, I love this detective. Shout out to her. She's great. Mitzi Roberts is her name, and she took on the cold case of these 2 murders. Right. Eventually was able to link DNA evidence to Little, and then had no idea where he was because he had left California, and so she had to orchestrate this manhunt for him, basically. By the time they had found him, they had DNA linked another victim to him, but the way they found him, he was drawing Social Security. Okay. And so they traced his Social Security checks to prepaid, I think it was a prepaid Walmart card. So he was sloppy. Towards the end, definitely. Yeah. I mean, he was pretty good about not leaving a paper trail for all those years because he had a long-term girlfriend with him, actually, who would shoplift for him. And they would shoplift together. Kill with him? She did not kill with him, but it's very likely she knew about his killings. Yeah, right. She's dead. She died in the 90s. I thought you meant she killed her. I was like, casual. He didn't kill her. She died. I believe it was of some sort of violent, I think it was a heart attack or an aneurysm. Got it. Something like that. Something like violent and unexpected. But yeah, so she was a large portion of the fact that he was able to survive without like needing money. But then once he got older and wasn't able to, do crime for money, once he was a lot older, he did have to draw on Social Security. So that's how they found him eventually in Kentucky. Extradited him to California to try him for those 3 murders. And then he was convicted. And then it wasn't until 2018 that he started confessing to the other criminals. And so, the other crimes. A Texas Ranger named James Holland caught wind of him, and that he was suspected and linked to all these other cases that they couldn't definitively prove him as being a part of. But yeah, so James Holland is a Texas Ranger who's known for sort of like going after cold cases like this. And so he's really good at also like getting criminals to kind of like empathize with him, or perhaps the other way around. Basically, he's good at like getting them to believe he's on their side. Like manipulation? Yeah, a little bit, but also just like playing like he's kind of depraved too. Got it. Okay. And so that he can kind of relate to them. And so he elicited most of these confessions from him. And like if you go look for the Sam Little tapes, you can hear James Holland on the tapes talking to him. It's kind of like what the Ted Bundy tapes are like. Because the guy who's interviewing him, he figured out a way to manipulate how he was talking to him. Totally. And the thing with Sam Little is they sort of had to, he was in a really awful prison, and they moved him to like a nicer facility. He has access to like foods he wants or whatever.
Yeah.
So he started confessing to like keep the good conditions, and then they would threaten to like move him back to the old prison and take away his privileges and whatever. So he kept confessing.
Got it.
But at a certain point, I think it became sort of like a notoriety type thing for him, where he would confess to these crimes now because he wants to be recognized for now being
Which
the
is like the
greatest serial killer.
narcissism
And,
side of the serial killer.
So he's playing into that now too.
Got it.
But yeah, I just think it's really significant that he was arrested for multiple, like attempted murder, rape, larceny, like all of this stuff, and he never did more than 2 years. And if they had just locked him up for like a substantial period of time, they would have saved so many lives.
Yeah.
But again, we run into the serial killer targeting people on the fringes of society, sex workers, and people who really just don't have anyone to vouch for them or to care that they're gone.
Right. I mean, the easier the target, the less you'll get caught.
Exactly. It's just really up state of like.
But I feel like I think what I've realized in the like majority of the serial killers we've talked about is the ones that like killed prostitutes and stuff like that, no one really heard about them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like they're almost like not killing anybody, quote unquote, important. Yeah. But it's like you hear about Ted Bundy, you hear about Manson, you hear about, well, Manson didn't really kill anybody.
Right.
But you know what I mean? Well, he didn't, but
he had people. Yeah.
Yeah, you hear about Ed Gein, you hear about Albert Fish because they killed like innocent people that were like of
Barbie and Ken. They didn't kill hookers. They killed teenage girls.
Yeah, so people who like counted in society, which is kind of like bullshit in a way because it's like you're just discriminating a human life. Like one person's disposable, one isn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's not okay.
It's just based on like drug addiction and like circumstance.
And I feel like cops probably let them go, not let them go, but we're on like a easier.
There's not as much incentive for cops to investigate murders for hookers because there's no family members clamoring for, you know.
And no one's like caring for where they went.
And then the other thing I noticed while doing a lot of this research was female detectives just seem a lot more likely to empathize with sex workers and like actually care and like look into their cases. So like in the case of the bone collector, how Ida Lopez was the only one like on the case. And then in this one, Mitzi Roberts is the one who actually like gave a enough to bring this guy in.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't tell you why I love Mitzi so much.
It's Mitzi or Ms. Mitzi?
Mitzi. M-I-T-Z-I.
Mitzi. Shout out Mitzi.
So she, in the courtroom, when he was convicted, I should just read this off, but I don't think I wrote it down. No, I did. So just as the sentencing came down, and he was given his sentence for like life in prison, and he was still talking about how he didn't do it and like whatever. It says Roberts picked up a red M&M out of the bowl in front of her at the prosecutor's table and winked at Little, and then walked out of the courtroom. That's just like so funny to me. Like, hey, gotcha, bitch.
That's actually really funny.
Right?
Yeah, she's like
amazing.
badass.
I love her.
That's awesome.
And then later on, when James Holland was questioning like how he could start to elicit these confessions, she was like, well, if you can like show yourself as like opposition to me, because like he hates women, but he really hates me.
I mean, hey.
Right? No, but yeah, and I don't want to like call out, like there are obviously good male detectives too. James Holland is a perfect example. There's a lot of hookers and sex workers that just get ignored. And I think if we had more women on the police force, that might be less likely to happen.
Or as like detectives in general.
Yeah. Like the number of times I've heard about a serial killer like being in custody and then being released and their spree continuing is just like, it's like basically every serial killer on this list.
Yeah, except for Ted Bundy escaped.
Ted Bundy did escape.
He jumped out a window. Yeah. So it's a little different.
Ted Bundy escaped twice, and that's due to, I mean, the prison he was being held in, but
this dude jumped out of a window. And like,
how do you let him go twice? Like the same jail.
true, yes. But like this dude jumped from like 2 stories.
I know.
He was like basically
just like
broken legged and
put
like
that
running
dude
around.
in a hole. Like, what are you doing?
I mean, honestly, yeah. But apparently he was just like so easy to talk to. Was like such a charmer.
Yeah.
Allegedly. We didn't talk about Ted Bundy, but
we didn't.
now we are, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, I don't really know how to wrap this episode up. This is just like, I don't know. I'm kind of riled up.
We're about to just start talking shit to people
for like 3 days. And
oh yeah, how do you feel about all this? How do you feel about like
sick? I literally feel sick. I like,
fair.
Yeah, I like it's hard to like do all this research and not find yourself being like putting yourself in the shoes of the killers in a weird way.
Okay,
like also
so
the victims, but like
you do that.
I don't try to. It's not like intentional.
Okay.
I just like it's I don't know. I just automatically empathize with like whoever I'm reading about.
I feel like that's where you and I are different in the sense of like, not that I don't empathize with the people, but when I was researching when I was younger about serial killers and doing forensics and doing criminal justice, when I wanted to go into the field, the one thing that I knew how to do was disconnect. So I cared more about, like, a lot of people have that idea of like, okay, this person like flipped a switch and is now crazy and he killed all these people. Like, is that going to happen to me? Is that what I'm going to turn into? And I feel like I'm the opposite, where it's like, I could never do that. So how is this person different than me? How are they psychologically wired? And how do I make sure I never get there?
Sure. Yeah. No, totally.
And
I mean,
that's why
like,
it's interesting to me.
It's not that I'm like putting myself in the shoes of these criminals and being like, oh, wow. That could be me. It's like I put myself in like it's sort of involuntary. You kind of just like envision yourself doing this, and or I envision myself like being in one of these situations, and I mean it just feels vile. But like no, I have so much empathy for other humans. Definitely, it's just, it feels gross. It feels gross, like being in that headspace. But then like the other part of it is like when you're reading about the victims, I end up empathizing with them in like a similar way, where I'm like, oh my God, that's just like the most horrible thing you can imagine. Like the Albert Fish, the kid, I don't want to go back into it. Anyway,
we're not going to talk about Albert Fish anymore.
Yeah.
No, I totally get it.
Up from multiple, from any perspective you really look at it from. But I also feel as though if I were like I would never become a serial killer, but I feel like most humans, if you put them in specific circumstances, and it can be different for each person to person, but like under the right circumstances, I think any human is capable of killing.
Oh, 100%. You and I had this conversation not that long ago. It just depends on what the situation is, and if you, I mean, I don't know how to like go into this without sounding weird, but it's just like, if your life is threatened, like, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Like I said, it's
or like
different
even if
circumstances
someone's
for everyone, like for
life of mine that I loved was threatened, I would not even blink. Like, touch my cat, you're dead. Just kidding. No, really.
You've been warned.
I am Manson's security team.
Right?
But no, for sure. I mean,
Did you name your cat after Charles or after Marilyn? Or both?
That's something we do not disclose in this
Cool.
house.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. It was mainly Manson, like Marilyn.
Okay, cool.
That's never been like actually, no one's ever actually asked. Like, not at, like, people have asked that, but not like, I've never like said it out loud.
I mean,
but
it's just like,
I mean, Marilyn Manson's named after Charles Manson and Marilyn Monroe.
Of course.
So, I mean, you guess you could date it back, but it's mainly Marilyn.
Yeah.
I love Marilyn Manson. I think he's just like the dopest dude ever.
Yeah.
And he's just, I could go on about
I was going to say, because
Manson.
Charles Manson isn't that cool.
No, he's kind of boring. And also, like,
right?
lazy as fuck.
Yeah, we didn't.
Making everybody else kill for him.
Right? No, I not even like,
Bitch.
it wasn't even like laziness. It was just like,
He was a master manipulator.
I have all these people who will do anything for me.
Yeah. Still boring.
Still a horrible human being.
Still boring. Yeah. No, I'm serious.
when I was researching Ed Gein, I was like, he kills people with a gun? That's kind of boring.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you think there'd be some struggle?
And out of all the serial killers, like Ed Gein is like doesn't want to get his hands dirty. Okay.
I know.
It was probably more just like he.
Oh, but they made like freaking Psycho and stuff after him, where it's like super gruesome, and like Bates Motel, I guess, was not that gruesome, but still.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
All these people after him.
Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I just want to hammer home that we need to figure out a better way to treat sex workers going forward.
Did not think you were going to go in that direction.
I think it's really important. Like as our culture and society becomes obsessed with serial killers, like I mentioned, it's important to also remember their victims and not just the serial killer, because that's sort of just glorifying the killer and not remembering the atrocities they committed.
100%.
But then the other thing that it's in almost every case I researched this week, it's sex workers are just in a position where they're super vulnerable and no one cares about them. And I just like and a lot of it is just the stigma. Like if we just removed in our society the stigma of sex work, they could receive a lot more protection.
I feel like another thing we should point out is like, we're not glorifying serial killers. We're not sitting here being like, this is why they're cool. No, we're talking about different people, different situations. We're talking about the victims, and we're talking about how it is important to not only take care of like whoever's psyche is around you, but also there's warning signs, and like you just overall like just talk about what is happening.
I don't know.
Oh, Lisa. Distractions. No, it's fine. The helicopters are more distracting, honestly. But I don't know. I guess overall, it's just important to know that we're not glorifying them, and we're just telling their stories, and we're talking about the psychology of them. And I feel like in a way, it's important to know.
It's important not to forget that these things happened.
100%. It happened not even that long ago.
Yeah. And in a way, to not like remember the serial killers is to disregard what happened to their victims.
And also like be careful out there, and like
as real.
Like it's still happening. People are obviously like, they don't call them really serial killers anymore, but like people are still like, it's escalated to like mass shootings, and it's escalated to instead of doing it individually, it's all at once. It's like, it's still a problem, and people have to take not only mental health into account, but just overall like psychology of people, and just make sure like I said before, like I don't know, treat your kids better.
Like for example, 80% of serial killers are white Caucasian males between the ages of like 20 and 45 or whatever. But like, as we've covered, Albert Fish was 66 and still killing. Yeah. Sam Little is a black guy, and the most prolific serial killer in American history. Barbie and Rose West were females and monsters. Yeah. There are other female
we didn't discriminate any
there are other serial
race
killers
or gender.
of color. Of Richard Ramirez was Hispanic.
Yeah.
There are so many different races and genders that play into this. So even though it is predominantly white men, it's not like it's only
that's why we wanted to cover the people that we did, because it's all the spectrums. It's men, women, like different races. It's young, old, and it's not the people that have like, you know, messed with pop culture, and, you know, people have turned serial killers into this glorified like celebrity thing, and they started giving them names like the Black Dahlia, and like just like cool names, I guess, to like glorify them. And I feel like it's great that they stopped doing that, because the more that you do that, the more you influence it, and it's not okay to keep doing that. So that's kind of where, you know, even though we talked about all them, this is the point that we're actually trying to get across.
Yeah. Real quick, as we end this, the police are still looking for leads on connecting Sam Little's victims or on the U.S. Mesa Bone Collector. So, I mean, even though it's unlikely that people watching our podcast are going to have any information about
I don't even know how many people are watching this right now.
If you do have any information about either of those, the police do want it. I think we're pretty much done. Did we skip anything?
No. There's still a police chase outside my house.
There's
We don't know
we
what's
have no
happening.
idea.
What's going on?
Can I read off Nick's?
Yeah.
Nick goes,
This is
"It's
Lisa.
lit as fuck outside, but also hashtag wild. You guys should be going live from in the field. Hashtag wild could be reporting live outside of a police standoff with an armed burglar.
Is this all him?
SWAT team negotiators just pulled up."
Wait, hashtag
Wait,
wow,
what?
we're on the scene. We're on.
Okay, we might actually go do that.
Yeah.
But we're going to wrap this episode here. Thanks so much for joining
Oh,
us.
my bad.
We'll let you know if we die tonight, but hopefully we don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm Matt.
I'm Susanna.
This has been Hashtag Wild. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.